The old basement of Seoul's Biological Engineering Center smelled like dust and forgotten things. June wiped sweat from his forehead as he pointed his light into the damaged server room. Water from a broken pipe had flooded the lower level, and he had been sent to check the damage. "Great," he muttered. Another late night. At 42, Jun had spent 15 years as a maintenance worker at the center. He fixed things. He kept systems running. He stayed quiet and did his job well. The pay was good enough to support his small apartment and his cat, Moon. That was all he needed. The water had mostly drained away, but the damage was clear. Several old storage units were soaked. Most of the technology in this room hadn't been used in decades. It was kept only because government rules said nothing could be thrown away. June set up his drying equipment and began checking which systems still worked. As he pushed a heavy shelf away from the wall, he noticed something strange. Behind it was a small door he had never seen before. "What's this?" he wondered. The door was locked, but the water had weakened the old wood. With a firm push, it broke open. Inside was a tiny room with a single computer terminal. It looked very old, maybe from the early 2100s. Curious, June connected a power source to the terminal. To his surprise, it turned on with a soft hum. Green text appeared on the black screen. "Guardian Project Classified. ECURATWCLERANC required." June should have called his supervisor. This was clearly something important and secret. But something made him hesitate. In 15 years, he had never done anything against the rules. But tonight, his fingers moved on their own, typing in the general maintenance code that worked on most old systems. The screen flickered. Then, "ACES GURIANTD, will CO mem to Guardian Archives." Files began to open automatically. June's eyes widened as he saw images of what looked like snake eggs in laboratory containers. The date stamp showed 2157, almost 70 years ago. "Project Guardian, Biological Defense Initiative," June read aloud. "Creation of enhanced anaconda units for settlement protection." He scrolled through the files, reading faster and faster. According to these records, the massive anacondas that now guarded all major human cities were not natural allies as everyone believed. They were created in labs during the resource wars. Scientists had used genetic engineering to make them bigger, smarter, and loyal to humans. "This can't be right," June whispered. Everyone knew the history. When the wars and climate disasters of the 22nd century nearly destroyed humanity, the giant anacondas had appeared mysteriously in the remaining forests. They had protected the surviving humans from dangerous animals and helped guide them to safe areas. Over time, a partnership formed. Now, the guardian anacondas were part of everyday life. They protected city walls, helped with dangerous work, and were honored in ceremonies. But these files told a different story. June found a video file marked Year 7 Assessment. With shaking hands, he played it. A tired-looking woman in a lab coat appeared on screen. "Day 2555 of Project Guardian," she said. "The subjects continue to show intelligence beyond our projections. The alpha specimen, designated Protector 1, has demonstrated problem-solving abilities that exceed our testing parameters. More concerning is the evidence of communication between specimens that appears to use methods we cannot detect or monitor." The woman looked nervous. Yesterday, 3 subjects orchestrated an escape attempt that showed clear planning and coordination. The attempt was stopped, but Security Officer Kim was killed. This marks the 4th staff casualty this year. She took a deep breath. "I am formally recommending project termination and humane disposal of all specimens. These creatures are evolving beyond our control. If they continue on this development trajectory, within generations they could potentially..." The video cut off suddenly. June sat in shocked silence. Then he noticed one final folder labeled Containment Breach. Final Records. Inside was a short message. "Specimens escaped. Facility locked down. If you are reading this, they have likely established themselves in the wild. God help us all. They are not what they appear to be. They are watching. They are learning. They err. The message ended there. Jun heard a noise behind him and turned quickly. The hallway outside remained dark and empty, but somehow the silence now felt threatening. With trembling hands, he downloaded the files onto his personal device. The history everyone knew was a lie. Humans hadn't been saved by the anacondas. Humans had created them. And then, somehow, humans had lost control. A loud crash from upstairs made him jump. Just normal building noise, he told himself. But suddenly, he wanted very much to be out of this basement. As Jun gathered his tools, a new thought struck him cold. If humans had created the anacondas, but now believed a different history, who had changed the story? And why? He needed to learn more, but he would have to be careful. Very careful, because if what he suspected was true, the anacondas weren't just guardians. They were rulers who had made their creators forget who was really in charge. Minji stood perfectly still as the massive anaconda slid past her. Even after 5 years as an anaconda liaison, she still felt a mix of fear and awe when this close to them. The creature was nearly 15 meters long, its scales shimmering with green and gold patterns in the morning light. "Good morning, Keeper 7, she said calmly. The giant serpent paused, its head turning toward her. Its eyes, larger than her fists, and a deep amber color, studied her for a moment. Then it dipped its head in what everyone recognized as the anaconda's greeting gesture. Minji smiled. This was why she loved her job at the Department of Serpent Affairs. The connection with these magnificent creatures made all the long hours worth it. She checked her tablet as she walked along the edge of the Eastern Forest Reserve. Her job today was simple: observe the anaconda's patrol patterns and report any changes. The Guardians protected Seoul's eastern wall from the dangerous wildlife that had evolved in the forests since the climate wars. "All normal," she murmured, marking down Keeper 7's position. But as she continued her rounds, something caught her attention. 3 more anacondas were gathered at the far northern corner of the reserve. This was unusual. The Guardians typically maintained even spacing along the perimeter. Minji kept her distance but used her zoom lens to observe them. The anacondas' heads were close together, their bodies forming a tight circle. It almost looked like they were talking. But that wasn't possible. The Guardians communicated through body language and simple signals, not conversation. "What are you up to?" she whispered. Her communicator buzzed, making her jump. "Liaison Park." The voice of Director Da was sharp and formal as always. "Your position shows you're off your assigned path." Minji winced. Of course they were tracking her. "Yes, Director. I noticed unusual gathering behavior among Keepers 4, 9, and 12. I was documenting it for my report." A pause. "Return to your scheduled route immediately. The Guardian's social behaviors are not your concern." "But sir..." "That's an order. Liaison Park." The connection cut off. Minji sighed and took one last photo before turning back. Director Da had always been strict, but lately he seemed especially tense whenever anyone showed too much interest in the anaconda's behavior. Back at the department headquarters, Minji uploaded her regular observations, but kept the photos of the gathering to herself. As she was leaving for the day, she bumped into Dr. Yuna, her former professor and mentor. "Minji, just the person I wanted to see." The older woman smiled warmly. "How are our friends today?" "Mostly normal," Minji said carefully. "But I did see something strange." Dr. Yuna's smile faded slightly. "Oh, what kind of strange?" Minji showed her the photos on her personal device. 3 of them were gathered like this for over 20 minutes. I've never seen them cluster this way during patrol hours. Dr. Yuna studied the images, her face unreadable. Interesting, but probably nothing to worry about. Perhaps they were simply sharing information about territory. That's what I thought at first. But Minji hesitated, then decided to share her concerns. This is the fourth unusual gathering I've seen this month, and always near water sources. Dr. Yuma handed back the device a bit too quickly. Seasonal changes affect their behavior. You know that. But it's not just that. The water quality reports from those areas show trace changes in mineral content after these gatherings. You've been checking water reports. Dr. Yuna's voice had a new edge to it. Minji nodded. Just curious. The changes aren't harmful, just small shifts in certain compounds. Dr. Yuna looked around as if checking who might be listening. Minji, you've always been one of my brightest students, so let me give you some advice. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Don't dig too deeply into things that don't concern you. The arrangement we have with the Guardians works. Don't question it. Before Minji could respond, Dr. Yuna walked away briskly. That night, Minji couldn't sleep. What had Dr. Yuna meant by the arrangement? Everyone knew humans and anacondas had a symbiotic relationship. The Guardians protected cities and helped with dangerous work. In return, humans provided them with territories and food. But Dr. Yuma had spoken as if there was something more to it, something secret. Making a decision, Minji pulled out a small device from her drawer. It was a monitoring sensor, technically government property that she wasn't supposed to have at home. Tomorrow, she would plant it near the water filtration system, where she'd seen the anacondas gathering. As she programmed the device, Minji tried to ignore the growing feeling that she was crossing a dangerous line. Director Dad would fire her if he found out. Or worse, 3 days after his discovery in the basement, Jun waited nervously at a small coffee shop in the Old Market District. The place was busy enough that no one would notice them, but quiet enough that they could talk. He checked the time again. His contact was late. Just as June was about to leave, a thin man with glasses slid into the seat across from him. Are you the maintenance worker? The man asked quietly. June nodded. Are you Juan? The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he pushed a paper menu toward June. Order the special. The owner is a friend. Confused but curious, June did as he was told. 5 minutes later, the shop owner brought them 2 cups of tea and then pressed a button under their table. A soft humming sound filled the air around them. Now we can talk, Juan said. It's a sound barrier. No one can hear us. Isn't that illegal? June asked, surprised. Juan smiled thinly. Many things are illegal when you ask too many questions about our guardians. June glanced around nervously, then pulled out his device. I found these files at the Biological Engineering Center. They show the anacondas were created by humans, but that's not what we're taught. Juan hardly looked at the device. We've known this for years. My group has been collecting evidence for decades. Your group. We call ourselves the Truth Seekers. Not very creative, I know. Juan sipped his tea. I'm a historian, or I was, until the university fired me for my research topics. June leaned forward. So you believe these files? The anacondas were made by us. Yes, but that's just the beginning. Juan took out his own device and showed June a series of images. Look at these city plans from 50 years ago, then compare them to what was actually built. June studied the images. The original plans showed straight, grid-like streets, but the actual city had wide, curving avenues with large open areas. I don't understand, June admitted. The changes all accommodate anaconda movement paths, Juan explained. Every major city redesign in the last 60 years has been altered in similar ways, always claimed to be for improved flow or natural harmony, but the result is always the same, making it easier for the anacondas to access all parts of the city. June felt a chill. That could be coincidence. Perhaps. But what about this? Juan showed him a chart. These are success rates for new technologies over the past century. See the pattern. Any invention that might threaten anaconda dominance, better security systems, advanced weapons, certain communication technologies, all have abnormally high failure rates or funding problems. The evidence was disturbing, but Jun remained skeptical. How could they control all that? Juan's next words were even more unsettling. We believe they've been selectively breeding humans. What? That's impossible. Is it? Juan showed him population statistics from various districts. Districts with higher compliance rates receive better resources. People there have more children. Districts that show resistance face more accidents and have declining birth rates. June shook his head. Even if all this is true, why? Why would they hide that they were created by us? Control, Juan said simply. If humans believe anacondas are natural allies who chose to help us, we feel grateful. If we knew we created them, we might feel entitled to control them. They couldn't allow that. But someone must know the truth. Government officials. Some do, Juan interrupted. But they've accepted it. Maybe they were convinced it's for the greater good. Or maybe they were threatened. Juan leaned closer. People who discover too much have accidents, June. My research partner fell from his apartment balcony last year. The official report said he was drunk. He didn't drink. A cold fear settled in June's stomach. Are you saying I'm in danger? We all are. But knowledge is our only weapon. Juan handed him a small device. This will let you contact me securely. I want to show you our real headquarters. There's so much more evidence. Suddenly, the shop owner approached quickly. Regular customers, act normal, he muttered as he passed. Moments later, two official-looking people in government uniforms entered the shop. They scanned the room slowly. Juan stood casually. Think about my offer, brother. Mother would love to see you at dinner Sunday. He spoke loudly, as if finishing a normal conversation. June caught on. I'll try to make it. As Juan left, passing by the officials without a glance, June pretended to enjoy his tea. His hand trembled slightly. He had just wanted to fix things, to live his quiet life. Now he was part of something dangerous. One of the officials looked directly at him, then turned away. Had they been looking for him? Or was he becoming paranoid? The monitoring device beeped softly in Minji's pocket. She had been waiting for 3 hours in the small observation booth overlooking the city's main water purification plant. The sky was growing dark, but her patience was finally rewarded. 3 large anacondas slithered toward the water facility. They moved with purpose, their massive bodies flowing like water across the ground. Minji recognized them from their scale patterns, Keepers 4, 9, and 12, the same group she had seen before. She held her breath as they approached the water tanks. What she saw next made her gasp. The largest anaconda, Keeper 4, lifted its head over the main tank. Then, slowly and deliberately, it opened its mouth. A thick, clear liquid dripped from specialized glands into the water below. They're adding something to our water, Minji whispered in shock. She quickly checked the readings on her monitoring device. The chemical composition of the water was changing. Nothing toxic, but definitely altered. The device identified trace amounts of compounds that affected human hormones. Minji's hands shook as she recorded everything. This was far bigger than strange behavior patterns. This was deliberate tampering with the city's water supply. When the anacondas finally left an hour later, Minji slipped away and hurried to the one person she thought she could trust, Dr. Yuna. Despite the late hour, the older scientist answered her door. She looked unsurprised to see Minji. I need to talk to you, Minji said urgently. It's about the anacondas. Dr. Yuna sighed deeply. You've been watching the water treatment plant. It wasn't a question. Minji felt a chill. How did you know? Come inside. Quickly. Once they were seated in Dr. Yuna's small living room, the older woman poured 2 cups of tea with shaking hands. I knew you wouldn't stop asking questions, Dr. Yuna said quietly. You never did, even as a student. I saw them adding something to our water, Minji said. Chemicals that could affect human behavior. Make us more compliant. Dr. Yuna didn't look shocked. Instead, she looked tired, not just compliant. They reduce aggression, violent tendencies. They help us be better. Minji stared at her mentor in disbelief. You knew? All this time? Some of us have known for years, Dr. Yuna admitted. The higher officials in the department, certain scientists. We discovered it accidentally about 20 years ago. And you did nothing. You let them drug an entire city. Dr. Yuna's face hardened. You think you understand, but you don't. Look at our history, Minji. Before the anacondas came, humans were destroying themselves. Wars, environmental collapse, violence everywhere. She leaned forward. The chemicals they add aren't mind control. They just help us control our worst impulses. Since they began doing this, violence has dropped by 80%. Depression rates have fallen. People are happier. Minji felt sick. It's wrong. People deserve to know. To choose. And what would they choose? More violence. More destruction. Dr. Yuna shook her head sadly. They protect us. We obey. The alternative was extinction. But. No buts. Dr. Yuna's voice was firm now. I'm telling you this because I care about you. Stop investigating. Accept things as they are. The Guardians know what's best for us. The way she said Guardians sent a chill through Minji. It sounded almost like worship. I can't do that, Minji said quietly. Dr. Yuna looked at her with genuine sadness. Then you're in danger. Director Da has already flagged your activities. I can't protect you anymore. I don't need protection. I need the truth. Dr. Yuna reached for her communicator. I need to report this conversation. I'm sorry, Minji. It's protocol. Minji stood quickly. I thought you were different. This is for your own good, Dr. Yuna insisted. They'll just place you in a different department. You'll forget all about this in time. But Minji had seen the look in Dr. Yuna's eyes. It wasn't just about a job transfer. People who knew too much disappeared. As Dr. Yuna turned to make the call, Minji made a split-second decision. She grabbed her monitoring device and ran for the door. Outside, the night was dark and cold. Where could she go? Not home. They would look for her there first. Not to friends or family. She wouldn't put them in danger. Then she remembered the small device Jun had slipped to her yesterday at the department. He had seemed nervous, whispering something about truth and secrets. She had thought he was just being strange, but now. With trembling fingers, Minji pulled out the device and pressed the single button on it. A map appeared with a blinking dot. I hope you're a friend, Jun, she whispered as she started walking. Because I think I just became an enemy of the state. Behind her, in the shadows of the street, a long serpentine shape moved silently, watching. The underground headquarters of the Truth Seekers was hidden beneath an old bookstore. Jun had been surprised when Juan led him through a secret door behind a bookshelf. It was like something from an old movie. Now 3 people sat around a table covered with maps, documents, and computer screens. Jun, Juan, and a nervous-looking young woman named Minji who had arrived just an hour ago. So you both discovered parts of the truth, Juan said, looking between them. Jun found the historical evidence. Minji caught them adding chemicals to our water. Minji nodded, still shaken from her escape. Dr. Yuna admitted it's been happening for decades. She said it makes humans less violent, more cooperative. And you risked everything to expose this, Jun said with admiration. I couldn't just ignore it. Minji looked down at her hands. People should know what's happening to them. Juan spread out several old paper maps on the table. We've been tracking anaconda activities for years. Look at these. The maps showed different cities around the country, with red marks indicating major events, natural disasters, disease outbreaks, and resource shortages. Notice anything? Juan asked. Jun studied the maps carefully. The anaconda territories shifted before each disaster. Exactly, Juan said. They moved to higher ground before floods. They left areas before disease outbreaks. They gathered near food storage facilities before crop failures. They knew what was coming, Minji whispered. But that's not all. Juan pulled out another set of documents. These are survival rates for different settlements during the collapse era. Settlements with anaconda guardians had a 90% survival rate. Independent human colonies without anacondas, only 15% survived. June frowned. So without their guidance, we might have gone extinct. Juan finished. That's the troubling part of all this. Yes, they're controlling us, but they've also been saving us. Minji looked confused. But why hide it? Why not just tell humans they know better? Would humans have accepted that? Juan asked. Would we have willingly given up control to another species, even if they were smarter? The room fell silent as they considered this. I found something else in the old files, Jun said finally. The anacondas didn't just protect random humans. They guided specific groups, scientists, farmers, teachers, people with useful skills. And they've eliminated threats, Juan added grimly. I've tracked mysterious deaths of certain inventors and political leaders. Always people who promoted destructive technologies or aggressive policies. Minji stood up and walked to a wall covered with news clippings. So what are we looking at? Not just control, but protection. I think, Jum said slowly, we might be looking at a complex form of symbiosis, not simple domination. They need us for something, and they're shaping us to suit that need. But they're also helping us survive. Juan nodded. That's been my theory for years. The relationship benefits both species, even if it's not equal. A young man rushed into the room, looking excited. Juan, we decrypted more of the old government files. He handed Juan a tablet. As Juan read, his eyes widened. What is it? Minji asked. It's a report from 70 years ago, Juan said. It suggests the original anaconda specimens were designed with unusual sensory abilities. They could detect radiation changes, atmospheric shifts, even solar activity. Why would they need that? Jun wondered. Because, Juan replied grimly, the scientists were preparing for environmental collapse. They wanted creatures that could navigate a changing world and guide human survivors. Minji suddenly made a connection. The water chemicals. Dr. Yunus said they help control our violent impulses. What if that's part of their plan? Making us more cooperative to ensure our survival. A species that engineers itself to be gentler, Jun mused. It's almost like they're upgrading us. Juan looked troubled. But they're still deceiving us, controlling us without consent. Maybe they tried honesty first, Minji suggested. Maybe humans rejected their guidance. Before anyone could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the facility. A voice came over the speakers. Security breach. Government forces approaching from the north entrance. Juan moved quickly, grabbing specific documents and a hard drive. Take the escape tunnel. We have 6 minutes before they reach this room. How did they find us? Jun asked, panicking. Juan looked grim. We always knew this place wasn't secure forever. Too many people coming and going. As they rushed toward the escape route, Minji stopped suddenly. Wait, what's this about the awakening? She pointed to a file on a screen, still open from someone's research. Director Dai stared at the screen showing Minji's empty apartment. The security team had arrived too late. He slammed his fist on the desk. Find her, he ordered. Search every camera feed in the city. Yes, sir, the young officer replied. What about the maintenance worker she contacted? Jun. He's missing too. Director Day stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Great Wall of Seoul was visible in the distance, where several anacondas patrolled in the morning light. His communicator beeped. Director, we found something. Minji accessed restricted files yesterday before disappearing. Files about the expansion plans. Director Day felt a chill. If she had seen those plans, then she knew what was coming. The anacondas were planning to take over 3 more residential districts, all without the knowledge of the people living there. Increase the search teams. This is now our highest priority. Miles away, in a small safe house on the edge of the city, Minji sat by a window, watching the street below. After escaping the Truth Seekers' headquarters, she, June, and Juan had separated. They would be harder to track that way. Juan had given her the file on the awakening before they parted. Now she read through it with growing alarm. The file contained satellite images, solar radiation reports, and anaconda movement patterns over the past 30 years. All pointed to one thing. The Guardians had been preparing for something major, something that would change everything. "It's like they've been building an ark," she murmured. The door opened, and June entered with food and supplies. "Any sign of pursuit?" Minji asked. "Not yet, but we can't stay long." June set down the bags and joined her at the table. "What have you found?" "According to these reports, the anacondas have been slowly creating shelters throughout the city. Underground spaces, reinforced buildings, special storage facilities, all hidden from public knowledge." "Shelters for what?" "I'm not sure, but..." Minji pulled up another document. "Look at these radiation readings. They've been rising steadily for decades. Something's coming from space. Something big." June's eyes widened. "And the anacondas knew." "Their sensory abilities," Minji said. "Remember what Juan said. They can detect radiation changes. They've known about this threat for generations." Before June could respond, Minji's stolen security device beeped. She checked it and gasped. "What is it?" June asked. New files just appeared in the department system, marked highest priority. She quickly downloaded them. "These are expansion plans. The anacondas are taking over more territory, including residential areas." June looked over her shoulder at the maps. "They're creating evacuation zones," he realized. "These aren't just territory grabs. They're clearing spaces near the shelter locations." "But why not tell people? Why keep it secret?" "Fear of panic, maybe. Or," June hesitated, "maybe they don't plan to save everyone." The thought hung heavy in the air. "We need to warn people," Minji decided. "Whatever's coming, people deserve to know." June nodded slowly. "But how? The government controls all official channels. And who would believe us?" Minji stood up suddenly. "I know someone at the Central Communication Center. If we can get in there, we might be able to send a message to the whole city." "That place will be heavily guarded," June warned. "We have to try." Minji began gathering equipment. "We can't let them decide who lives and who dies." As they prepared to leave, June's communicator, the secure one from Juan, buzzed. The message was short and alarming. "Anaconda Communication Center found. Disguised as we the Eurostation. Come by immediately." Below was an address on the outskirts of the city. "Change of plans," June said, showing Minji the message. This might be even better than the communication center. Director Dai stood before the massive anaconda known as Protector One. The creature's eyes, ancient and knowing, stared into his own. "They know too much," Dai said, feeling the familiar pressure of the anaconda's mind touching his. It wasn't words exactly, more like images and feelings pushed directly into his brain. The anaconda's message was clear. "Find them. Stop them. The plan cannot be disrupted." "I understand," Dai replied. "But what if they've already spread the word about the awakening?" The anaconda's response came as a series of vivid mental images. Shelters being sealed, selected humans being saved, others left outside. "That seems extreme," Dai said carefully. "These are just a few troublemakers. Surely we don't need to accelerate the timeline." But the massive serpent had made its decision. Images flooded Dai's mind, the sun flaring, radiation washing over Earth, time running out. The awakening wasn't coming soon. It was already beginning. The sky turned an odd shade of red as June and Minji approached the weather station. It sat alone on a hill outside the city, surrounded by tall fences and warning signs. "It doesn't look special," June said as they watched from the trees. "That's the point," Juan replied. He had met them a mile back, bringing equipment, and 3 more truth seekers. It's supposed to look boring, but our energy readings show massive power usage inside. Minji studied the building through binoculars. 2 guards at the main entrance, probably more inside. How do we get in? Jun asked. Juan smiled slightly. We don't need to break in. We have this. He held up an ID card. From a sympathetic scientist who works there. It will get us through the first security door. After that, we'll have to be careful. As they prepared to move, the ground suddenly trembled beneath their feet. In the distance, sirens began to wail across the city. What's happening? Jun asked, steadying himself against a tree. Minji checked her device. Emergency alerts are going out. Some kind of solar event. All citizens are being directed to safety zones. The shelters, Juan realized. They're activating the shelters now. We need to hurry, Minji said. They moved quickly toward the fence. As they reached it, Jun looked up at the sky again. The red glow was growing brighter. Inside the weather station, chaos reigned. Scientists rushed between monitoring stations while security personnel barked orders. In the center of the main room, 3 massive anacondas had entered through special large doors. Director Day stood before the largest one, Protector 1, receiving mental images at a dizzying pace. The solar flare is accelerating, one scientist called out. Radiation levels rising faster than predicted. How long do we have? Day asked. Hours, not days, came the grim reply. Day turned back to Protector 1. We need to speed up the evacuations. Some districts aren't ready. The anaconda's response came as a clear impression. Some would not be saved. It was too late. But that's thousands of people, Dab protested. The anaconda's eyes were cold and ancient. More images flooded Day's mind. Centuries of planning, careful breeding programs, selected genetic lines preserved. The strong would survive. The rest were not essential. For the first time in his career, Dai felt doubt about their guardian's plans. Jun, Minji, and Juan slipped through a side entrance using the stolen ID card. Inside, they found themselves in a long hallway lined with scientific equipment. This way, Juan whispered, following his scanner, which detected the largest power source. As they turned a corner, they froze. Through a large window, they could see into an enormous chamber. The sight made them gasp. Dozens of anacondas were gathered in circular formations. In the center of each circle was a strange biomechanical device. The anacondas had their heads pressed against these devices, which glowed with pulsing blue light. What are they doing? Jun whispered. They're connecting with our systems, Minji realized. Look at the data flows. On screens around the room, information streamed at incredible speeds. Weather data, population statistics, resource allocations. They're making decisions, Juan said, about who goes to the shelters and who doesn't. Just then, the largest anaconda, Protector 1, raised its head and looked directly at their window. Its eyes seemed to pierce through them. An alarm blared. Intruders in Section C, announced a mechanical voice. Run, Juan shouted. They turned to flee but found guards blocking both ends of the hallway. They were trapped. In here, Minji said, pulling open a door to a small monitoring room. Inside, screens showed cities around the world. On each screen, the same pattern was playing out. Anacondas gathering at key points, people being herded toward specific areas, chaos as communications began to fail. It's happening everywhere, Jun said in shock. Not just our city. One large screen showed a satellite view of the sun. A massive flare erupted from its surface, shooting directly toward Earth. That's it, Minji whispered. The awakening. A solar radiation burst that could wipe out most life on Earth. And they knew, Juan said bitterly. They'd been preparing for generations while keeping us in the dark. The door burst open. Director Day entered with 4 guards. You shouldn't be here, he said coldly. People deserve to know what's happening, Minji argued. You're deciding who lives and who dies. Day's expression softened slightly. The anacondas have been planning for this for over a century. Without them, no one would survive. But they're choosing who to save based on their own criteria, June protested. Yes, Dai admitted, just as they've been breeding us for radiation resistance for generations. The chosen have the best chance of surviving what's coming. Chaos covered the city as the sky burned with strange lights. People ran through streets, following emergency messages on their devices. Government workers in protective suits directed crowds toward large buildings marked with green symbols. These are the shelters, Jun said, watching the scenes on the monitors in the control room. Hidden in plain sight all these years, Director Dai had ordered them held but not harmed. Now they sat under guard as the anacondas continued their work in the main chamber. Why tell us this now? Minji asked Da. Why not just lock us away? Dai looked tired, the weight of his knowledge heavy on his shoulders. Because it doesn't matter anymore. In 6 hours, the main radiation wave will hit. Only those in the shelters will survive. And the anacondas decided who gets saved, Juan said bitterly. They've been preparing for generations, Dai replied. You think this is the first time Earth has faced this? The anacondas know the cycle. Every few thousand years, a massive solar event wipes the slate clean. A scientist rushed in with new readings. Director, radiation levels are rising faster than expected. The anacondas are signaling for final evacuation. Dai nodded and turned to Jun, Minji, and Juan. You three have a choice. Come to the shelters with us, or stay and face what's coming. The anacondas have authorized your entry despite your actions. Why would they save us now? Jun asked suspiciously. Because you showed courage and intelligence, traits they value. Da looked at them with something like respect. They've been breeding humans for these qualities for centuries. Minji stood up defiantly. I won't go unless you tell everyone the truth. About the anacondas, about how they've controlled us. There's no time for. A massive tremor shook the building, cutting off Dai's words. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by emergency power. First electromagnetic pulse. The scientists said grimly. Main communications are down across the hemisphere. In the darkness, through the window to the main chamber, they could see the anacondas gathering in a tight circle. Their scales glowed with a faint blue light. What are they doing now? Juan asked. Activating the deep shelters, Dai explained. Places they've built beneath the city over centuries. Another scientist burst into the room. Director, the anacondas are sending new instructions. They're ordering a full evacuation. Everyone, not just the selected groups. That's impossible, Dai said, stunned. The shelters can't hold everyone. They've opened additional spaces we didn't know about, the scientist continued. Underground complexes, hidden bunkers. They're sending coordinates now. Jun looked at Minji and Juan in confusion. I don't understand. Why change the plan now? Through the window, they could see Protector 1, the largest anaconda, staring directly at them. Its ancient eyes seemed to hold sadness. Suddenly, Minji gasped as understanding dawned. The shelters weren't built for us, were they? They were built for the anacondas. Dai nodded slowly. Yes, the deep shelters were designed to protect them from the radiation. They should have gone there days ago to be safe. Then why are they still here? Jun asked. Because they're staying behind, Minji realized. They're giving up their shelters for humans. The main door opened, and a smaller anaconda slithered in. It approached Director Dai and raised its head. Dai's eyes widened as he received its mental message. They cannot survive the radiation. Dai translated, his voice breaking. Their bodies are too sensitive to it. They've known all along that this event would be their extinction. Everything they've done. The breeding programs, the chemical adjustments, the technological guidance. It was all to prepare humans to survive without them. They're sacrificing themselves for us, Juan whispered, his earlier anger fading. Outside, the sky turned a deep purple as radiation levels continued to rise. On the monitors, they could see people filing into shelters across the city, guided by government workers following the Anaconda's final instructions. "We need to go," Day said urgently. "Now, they can't hold the communication systems much longer." As they prepared to leave, Protector 1 slithered to the window separating them, its massive head pressed against the glass, eyes fixed on Minji. She approached cautiously and placed her hand on the glass. A flood of images filled her mind. Anacondas guiding humans through centuries, protecting them, preparing them. And something else, a message for the future. "They've left something for us," she said quietly. "Knowledge. Archives. Everything they know, stored in special biological containers. They want us to find it after they're gone." Protector 1 blinked once, slowly, then turned away to rejoin the others. 5 years passed since the great solar flare. The world outside the shelters had changed. Forests grew differently, with strange new plants thriving in the altered environment. The skies often glowed with unusual colors at night as Earth's atmosphere continued to heal. Minji stood on a hill overlooking New Seoul, a settlement built by survivors. Unlike the crowded city of the past, this one spread out with green spaces between buildings. Gardens grew on every rooftop. Children played in parks where statues of anacondas stood as reminders of their guardians. "The latest group is returning today," Jun said, joining her on the hillside. At 47, his hair was now streaked with gray, and new lines marked his face. "Any sign of surviving anacondas?" Minji asked, though she already knew the answer. Jun shook his head sadly. "No, the search teams found remains in the old communication center. They stayed there until the end, maintaining the systems that kept our shelters safe." Minji nodded, fighting back tears. In the years since emerging from the shelters, humans had searched for any anacondas that might have survived. But the radiation had been too strong for their sensitive bodies. Not one had lived. "The council meeting starts soon," Jun reminded her. "Juan is waiting with the new findings." As they walked back to the settlement, people nodded respectfully to Minji. After leading one of the largest shelters during the crisis, she had become the leader of New Seoul. Her knowledge of both human and anaconda intentions had made her uniquely qualified for rebuilding. In the council chamber, a simple building with large windows, Juan waited with several scientists. At his side sat Director Day, now an old man but still sharp-minded. "We've decoded another section of the biological archives," Juan announced as they gathered around a table. "The anacondas left more than we imagined." The biological archives had been Minji's mission since they emerged from the shelters. Following the mental images Protector 1 had shared, she had led teams to special chambers deep underground where the anacondas had stored their knowledge in organic material that survived the radiation. "Show us," she said. One of the scientists activated a display. "These are genetic sequences the anacondas preserved. But they're not anaconda DNA. They're designs for new organisms, ecosystem builders, soil purifiers, air cleaners, tools to help us restore Earth," Day said quietly. "But that's not all," Juan added. "We found this hidden deeper in the code." The display changed to show ancient symbols and images. The scientists had spent years translating them. "The anacondas weren't the first guardians," Juan explained. "According to these records, they were created by another species that faced extinction millions of years ago. That species had been guided by yet another before them. A chain of guardians," Minji whispered. "Each facing extinction, each creating a new guardian to continue their work," Juan confirmed. "The anacondas were just the latest link. And now that responsibility falls to us," Jun realized. Minji walked to the window and looked out at the children playing in the distance. "They'd bred us for specific traits over generations, not just for radiation resistance, but for compassion, cooperation, intelligence. They made us better," Daz said, "so we could be worthy successors." One of the scientists pointed to another section of the display. They left designs for the next guardians, organisms we could create when we're ready, when Earth faces another extinction cycle thousands of years from now. The room fell silent as everyone considered the weight of this inheritance. So the anacondas never really controlled us to dominate us, Jun said finally. They were preparing us to replace them. Their final act of control was giving us the responsibility of becoming guardians ourselves, Minji agreed. Later that evening, Minji stood alone in a special garden where a preserved anaconda skin had been displayed with honor. It had belonged to Protector One, recovered from the communications center where it died maintaining systems until the very end. "We thought you controlled us," she said softly to the remains. "But you were teaching us, preparing us, and now we understand." She placed her hand on a small container she carried. Inside were the first seeds genetically modified using the anaconda's knowledge, plants designed to clean radiation from soil. Tomorrow, they would begin planting them across the damaged lands. It would be the first step in a journey that might take centuries, restoring Earth, preparing humanity for its new role. As Minji left the garden, she looked up at the strange, beautiful sky. Somewhere up there, the cosmic cycles continued. Someday, another threat would come. But by then, humanity would be ready to face it, and perhaps ready to create their own guardians to continue the cycle.